U.S. Ambassador to the Russian Federation, Ambassador McFaul, will speak on the current state of U.S.-Russia relations.
So, welcome to Sponsor House, our badminton room, that's what we call this. It's really great to see so many Americans here again for the second time in a row. For those of you who weren't here last time, my name is McFaul. I'm the ambassador here. Before coming here, I worked for 3 years at the White House, and in my real life and my future life, I teach at Stanford University. So when somebody gives me the opportunity in a giant room like this with a microphone, I usually think I have an hour and 10 minutes, which is what we get at Stanford to give our lectures. And I'm going to say a few things, but I'm going to be short, and I'm going to figure out a way to get to your questions as fast as I can. Before I start, I also want to introduce my wife, Donna Norton. We call her the ambassadress, and she does a lot of things around here, including, can I advertise it? Zumba, Tuesdays and Thursdays, right here, 10:30. You can sign up, and if we get you on it cleared, I think there's a small fee, but...
It's through the American Women's
Organization.
Whoops. It's a great group, a great way to meet lots of great, wonderful women, so.
Yes. So far they haven't allowed me to come, but I do see they have a lot of fun here. And let me also introduce one of my sons, Luke, who's in the 4th grade. Stand up and say hello, Luke. My oldest son is Cole. Some of you I know Cole. He's in the 9th grade, but he's in China right now. That's what you do on spring break when you live in Moscow and you go to AAS. I thought about giving a big talk on the state of U.S.-Russia relations, and I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do instead, if you're really interested and you're on Facebook or Twitter, I'll send you the slides tonight. Okay? Because in fact we do have a big talk that we develop over time, and I go around to universities and different places to give, and that will give you the whole layout of kind of the President's approach to what we used to call in the very beginning of our time in government, the reset, and our approach for how to develop our relationship with Russia, both with government and society, and the results. I'm just going to, maybe I'll just give you where we're at today. And in particular, where I see my role and our mission and the mission of the embassy and how we fit into that. And if you were here last year, when I was brand new, I still feel pretty new, by the way. I've only been an ambassador, I've only been in the State Department 13 or 14 months. I learned just the other day that it actually, in the State Department, they count their assignments by months. So that was interesting to me. We went around the room and I've been here 18 months, I'll be here 6 months. So now I'm learning. I came and I put out a mission statement, actually, on our blog. And I highlighted 3 things that I wanted to do, especially as U.S. Ambassador, as the new U.S. Ambassador here in Russia. One was to help formulate and develop and then execute the President and the administration's policy towards Russia. I had come from the National Security Council at the White House. I'd been there on day 1. The day after inauguration, I started my life as a government bureaucrat, and I thought that we should continue to be in connection with our colleagues back in Washington, not only in the execution of the policy, but in the development. Second, as an ambassador and carrying out that policy, I set out for myself a goal of putting special emphasis on developing economic ties between the United States and Russia. And that's a mandate from President Obama. That comes from him. It's an idea he had very early on in our administration. We were negotiating the New START Treaty, which reduces nuclear weapons. It was great. We had to use the President of the United States to be our chief negotiator. I say unfortunate because every now and then he turned to us and he's like, you know, why do I pay these staff? They don't do anything. Here I am again negotiating telemetry. Raise your hand if you know what telemetry is. Oh, of course, this is a particular group. Most people have never heard of it, and neither had the President before we had to negotiate this treaty. But we got him into it, you know, and negotiating all the various details of the New START Treaty. But at one moment he said, look, if all we do over the next 8 years, because he, of course, assumed rightly in retrospect, that he'd be around for 8 years, is just talk about nuclear weapons. Then we're no different than Nixon and Kissinger and Brezhnev and Gromyko, back in 1974. In fact, if you wander around, you can see all those guys and their photos and the signing of one of those arms control agreements right in this very room in the 70s. And his idea was we have to develop a multi-dimensional relationship with Russia, not just about nuclear weapons. So economic focus, and particularly on the high-tech focus, to try to strengthen ties between Americans and Russians, not just in oil and gas, although we're very appreciative of that as well, but also in this other sphere. And then third, kind of chief objective I set for myself and for our embassy was to battle what I call stereotypes and misperceptions of President Obama, the Obama administration, and America in this country. Because tragically, I came here first in 1983. I've been coming back and forth on and off ever since. And tragically, in my opinion, there's still a lot of misperceptions, misconceptions about who we are as a people and what we are as a country. And I'm speaking just about basic things, not about our debates about Syria. So I set out for ourselves a kind of mission to really get much more involved and engaged in that in a head-on way. So briefly, how are we doing on those three? And then I'm going to end and I'm going to talk about anything from Syria to adoptions to who's going to win the NCAA basketball tournament, if you're interested. I know. Anybody choose Gonzaga here? Overrated. We were too wise, we knew. Though Stanford's not in the tournament, so I better be very careful here and get a little too flippant, because anytime I do that, people remind me that we just lost in the NIT tournament. Okay. Anyway, let's come back to, so where are we at on these big things? In terms of the big policy objectives, I think it's fair to say, and right to say, that the last year's been a pretty tough one in U.S.-Russia relations, especially if you compare it to the exciting times in the early part of the Obama administration, 2009, 2010, 2011. And principally, the divide, in my opinion, as we assess it, has to do with a conflict or a disagreement over what President Obama calls universal values. And you see that manifested in our disagreements with the Russian government on Syria, and you see it manifested in our disagreements with the Russian government over what is happening here in this country. And I would say those two, I could talk longer if you're interested about other issues, but those two have created more tension over the last year and a half than we had earlier in our administration. And led, in our view, to some pretty tragic outcomes, including, for me, most tragically, the discontinuation of adoptions between our two countries with this law that was passed last December. And there are other pieces to it, but if I had to highlight places where we've had drift in a negative direction, it's over that bundle of issues. However, I want to remind you that at the same time that we're disagreeing over those things, a lot of the things that are vital to American national security and to American economic interests are moving forward, I would say, in a very positive, if quiet way. And you said there were some journalists here, so we're off the event is not off the record. You can say all you want, take all the photos you want. My comments are off the record, although my comments are never off the record, I've learned. So, I learned that the hard way sometimes. But what's interesting to me as a previous and future social scientist, as an analyst, look now on the inside doing things, is that the press and commentators, you don't write about non-events, right? So nobody's writing about its day, I don't know what day we're in the Obama administration. Like I should have a count, right? But and yet again, the second Georgian-Russian war has not happened, right? It doesn't make page 1 news in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. Yet again, and day 570 1978, the New START Treaty is still working. Doesn't make headlines. And I would say, and if you're interested in questions, we can get into the details. If you look at what are President Obama and our administration's top security interests in the world, we are closer to Russia on all of them except one very crucial one, that's Syria. So, North Korea. We, with the Russians, have a similar diagnostic of that problem and approach to that problem. We're not achieving the results we want, and that's a different matter, right? But we are locked together in terms of our approach. Our chief person on North Korea was here about 10 days ago and meeting with his Russian counterpart. On North Korea, we are exactly in the same place. Iran, almost exactly the same place. We have some disagreements in the margins about the nature of what the Russians call our unilateral sanctions, but basically we see the problem the same way. And through the P5+1, we're working towards a similar outcome. Afghanistan, probably the least well understood place of cooperation that probably means the most to my government and our government. I get used to saying my government here, I can say here, our government. And that is, when we came to the government back in 2009, about 5% of our supplies to our troops in Afghanistan went through what we call the Northern Distribution Network, which basically starts in Virginia on a boat and goes through the Baltic states, then goes through trains all the way through Russia, through Central Asia, into Afghanistan. It's an incredibly complicated network that took a long time to build, and I used to do that in my old job at the White House, but now over 50% of our supplies go through this network. And some of those supplies, some very important supplies, like jet fuel, the major source of those supplies comes from this country. And nuclear weapons and the control of nuclear materials around the world. In some, I would say, most of our chief foreign policy security issues, we are closer to Russia than apart, and we feel pretty good about that. Syria being a big exception. Second, in terms of dogs that aren't barking or things you're not reading about, the economic story, I would say, by and large, is a positive one, both in terms of trade and investment, investment, Russian investment in America, as well as American investment here. I see some people that are leading that charge in the room today. We got WTO done, we got Jackson-Vanik repealed, we got PNTR, we have a new visa regime in place. Those are all the things that we can do to help you. At the end of the day, we want American investors and Russian investors, the private sector, to be making choices and decisions about these things. By definition, I don't want Doran to make investment decisions. That, to me, is a bad thing when the government does that. For those of you who don't know, I'm also at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. And at the Hoover Institution, they strongly believe, get the government out of the way. I too believe that, and so does Barack Obama. Our job is to create the permissive conditions, and we think that's a pretty good story. The numbers are moving up, still smaller than they want, but that is moving in the right direction. And then there's one big variable that this year will be a critical one, but that is an unknown, and that's about missile defense. This has been a very confrontational issue that goes back all the way to the early Reagan years and Star Wars. We have now done some big changes in terms of our planned deployments in Europe and in Alaska. Maybe you read about the last couple of weeks. And now we are entering into a very interesting set of negotiations with Russia about if there's some conditions, however limited, that we might be able to cooperate with them on missile defense, or at least as a minimum, not to have this as a big issue of confrontation. So I would say, it's a mixed picture, but there's a lot moving forward that you don't read about that we are continuing to push. Second, I already talked about the economic piece, so I won't go through it. I will put up, and I encourage you to go to our website too, where you can find all this information up there. As an academic, I believe strongly in pushing out real data, hard data, and if you haven't been to our website in a while, it's changed dramatically, so I encourage you to, and you can get all the numbers there. And here I just seek your advice and your counsel of additional things we should be doing. Literally, in the questions and answers, I would encourage you to reach out to me either tonight or through one of these other platforms, because we want to know how we can help. The mandate has come from the President of the United States, sitting across the table from President Putin. They both agreed, we got to do this, and they turned, Obama said, okay, Mike, you get back there to Russia and you do that. We were in Mexico at the time. And we're trying to figure that out, and we could use your help on that. Third, and finally, on the stereotypes piece and the misconceptions. This is hard, because there are certain political groups and certain media outlets that obviously have interest in propagating, what's the diplomatic word for a lie? Misinformation about our country. So when I read, and I'm not going to go into the one, I got it written in front of me, but when I read or I see on TV, America, the worst place in the world to live. That's a real title from a real television station a couple weeks ago. We have some problems with that. We as administration do, and I do personally. And I take it personally, frankly. Unfortunately, sometimes I take it too personally. But when there's just these egregious things that are just not true about what we're doing here, we take offense. It's another thing to say, have an argument about your healthcare system versus ours, or those kind of things. I welcome that, and I think that kind of conversation is good and healthy for us, by the way. I welcome Russian criticism of our policy and of issues they have, and we do that every day in this building with Russians. What's hard for me as an academic is to accept that we can't agree on kind of basic facts. Like, at Stanford, you can't start your presentation of your PhD by saying, in my dissertation, I'm going to assume that 2 + 2 is 5. You just can't do that, because if you can't even agree on that, then everything else that follows is not very interesting. So we're aggressive in this. When we met last, I had just discovered Twitter. I had never been on Twitter in America. I had never even seen a tweet. Encouraged by Secretary Clinton, we had a kind of mandate really to be creative, and I would say kind of cutting edge and on the pioneers in this. And our embassy is known around the world now for doing that. And now I think we're up to 45,000 Twitter followers. Maybe we'll have a couple hundred more tonight. It's at McFaul, very easy to find. I now have 9,000 friends on Facebook. I had 200 when I moved to Russia. And in fact, if you really know Twitter, if you really know Facebook, you know that in fact I only have 4,999 friends, because Facebook only allows you to have 5,000 friends. I have another 5,000 followers on Facebook, because you're capped out at 5,000. And the same goes for we have about 10,000 on our embassy platform, and we are using these as well as more traditional vehicles to just push out information about the United States. And it's everything from basketball to our position on Syria. And we take a lot of advice and guidance, both from the White House, frankly from the White House as much from the State Department, because they do this in a very effective way. Friends of mine are there. I would encourage you to check it out, and if you have feedback for us, please give it to me. If you have stories, good news stories about cooperation, we're always looking for that. In February, for instance, we ran 28 days of good news of U.S.-Russian cooperation that you've never heard of. And every day we tweeted out something about a group of Americans and a group of Russians. Sometimes it was kids, sometimes it was astronauts, sometimes it was presidents, about cooperation that people just are not getting from traditional media sources. So if you have that, and including your own activities here, we welcome it. And then finally, two lessons. Finally, in terms of this battle, and I know I said this last year, but I don't think everybody was here last year. Obviously, our best tool is our country. Because in my opinion, we have a pretty kick-ass place, what I call home. And we don't need any marketing. We don't need to hire anybody. We don't need to spin anything. We just need to tell our story of who we are, what's our history, what's our culture, what have been our problems. And I talk a lot about problems and historical struggles in terms of democracy. I'm quite open about that. And I used to teach a course on democracy, by the way, at Stanford, so it's a subject I feel comfortable in. But at the end of the day, it's just being America and just telling the basic facts about America that usually has the biggest impression. Just yesterday, I was over at Kaspersky Labs, an internet company here that goes after viruses, and just showing up. It was an event there, by the way. Lots of people tweeted about it that work there, and one of the engineers at Kaspersky, he just took a photo of my car. It's a Cadillac, black Cadillac with the flag, the United States of America on it, right? He just took a photo of it and he tweeted it out, and I retweeted that, and that got an amazing discussion going about, one, Cadillac's a great company, a great car, and I hope someday I get to buy one, so that's good. Two, somebody tweeted, I really like the fact that the American ambassador drives an American car. I wish our leaders would do that. And then somebody pushed back, well, we don't have the right cars yet. Well, we need to get that. So a whole debate about just the photo of our car. So I didn't say anything, I didn't do anything. I didn't get into any argument with anybody at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Literally, it was just driving to a plant that created this interesting discussion. And I can tell you 100 stories like that. I won't, because I want to take your questions, and I know we have other speakers. But I guess I just want to end with my plea to you all that you're our best ambassadors here. Just waking up and acting like a good American. I'm assuming everybody here is a good American. We have some ones that I've had to talk about recently in the press and with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that are difficult. But just be yourself and be proud to be an American here. And you are really, in ways that I cannot be, because I have certain responsibilities, but just by being yourself, that is going to help us in terms of this third objective. So I just plead to you to take that seriously, because believe me, people notice. People notice the way you carry yourselves. I've seen it in good times, and I've seen some bad incidences where I've seen Americans behaving badly, and people are noticing, including sometimes our own folks. But by and large, the other impression is the overwhelming positive one, and I just want to empower you. So just raise your right hand and repeat after me. I am now swearing you in as citizens ambassadors. Nobody's putting up their hands. Okay, all right, my job, not yours. But seriously, I would like you to take the challenge and help us, both in terms of your advice to me, but also what you can do to communicate the message of America within this country. Now, one last thing that some of you have asked me about, and I'm trying my best to change. We have events from time to time at Spaso, and you can read about them on all these platforms I talked about. And people rightly ask every now and then, why am I not invited? The truth of the matter is that our budgets, just so you know, I didn't know this until I got here either. But our budgets are designed to reach out and engage with the countries that we're working in. And this is true in France, it's true in England, it's true here in Russia. And so the main purpose of these events and these where we bring American musicians, for instance, or we bring various folks here, is to reach out. But I want to change that. And I'm trying to change that. And I've always started to quietly change it, and it's a little bit of a battle at the embassy, but I think we're making progress. And we're going to do at least a couple of new things. And so, if you signed up for this event, you are now going to be, for the next whenever we have concerts, you are now going to be in a lottery. Your name is just going to pop up in a database, and we're going to send you an invitation. And I hope you come, because if it pops up the first time, it's not going to pop up the second. Don't hold your breath. I'm going to wait for the rock and roll band. Come. And we're just trying to get more people involved. Number two, we haven't quite set the date on this, but the best party that I attend ever in Moscow is at the Marine House. And it's the Marines, and it's done usually on a Friday night, happy hour. They let little guys and gals come. They serve popcorn and soft drinks as well as other kinds of drinks. The proceeds from these happy hours go to their ball, fantastic Marine ball that we went to, really a fun event. So I had this idea. Let's have one Marine happy hour sometime this summer. Probably, we're thinking like maybe the last day of school, so that Friday night for AS. And we'll have it here. And we'll have it, you'll have to register for security reasons. We'll have it here. The Marines will be in charge, not me. And it will be a fundraiser. I'm looking at you guys back there. Yeah, I'm putting you on the hook right now. They didn't know I was going to say this. But we're going to experiment with this. And this will be a way, you'll have to buy your own beer. We can't buy your beer. Because that's against the rules of the State Department. Especially if you've been watching the debate back home, you know why we can't buy your beer. But I promise you, it'll be a really interesting and unique event. So that's the second thing we're going to do. And if you have other ideas for how we can integrate this community into our diplomatic community, all right? Thank you all.